So, imagine finding out that the exact same Congress that routinely struggles to keep, the basic lights of the government on,
Right.
just quietly and almost unanimously passed this massive, highly complex plan. A plan detailing exactly what happens if terrorists attack the American power grid during, like, a catastrophic winter freeze.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive when you put it like that.
It really does. You hear so much about the gridlock and the performative outrage on the news, but then you look under the hood of a single legislative day and you find this incredibly complex, high-stakes machinery just quietly churning along.
It forces you to completely reassess how you view the daily operations of the government,
Yeah.
honestly. The contrast between what makes the evening news and
Yeah.
what actually gets codified into law is just staggering.
Oh, absolutely. So, welcome to Congress in Context. Today we are taking a deep dive into the congressional record from July 13th, 2026 for you. And we're looking at a day that perfectly captures that exact contrast. We're going to explore these rapid-fire domestic security votes in the House, a massive, trillion-dollar defense debate over in the Senate.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and some surprisingly moving bipartisan floor tributes that might actually fundamentally change how you view the people running our government.
We really do have a robust stack of sources today. But our mission, as always, is simple. We want to extract the signal from the noise.
Exactly.
We want to look past the partisan talking points and understand the actual mechanics of the policies shaping the country right now.
For sure. But before we jump in, just a quick casual housekeeping note for you, our listener. This deep dive is a completely independent, ad-free civic education project.
That's right.
So if you want to help support the production infrastructure that keeps this resource sustainable, you can just use the Buy Me a Coffee link located right there in your app's show notes. Your support really means everything to us.
It really does.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really grasp the contrast we were talking about today, we need to start in the House of Representatives.
Okay.
Because before we get into the massive, sweeping debates happening in the Senate, it's crucial to see what happens when lawmakers actually agree. On this specific day, the House moved with just dizzying efficiency.
It really did.
They passed a whole flurry of highly targeted Homeland Security and travel bills.
Right, so while the Senate is debating, like, literal World War III scenarios, the House is literally passing bills to make sure the TSA lines move faster.
Exactly.
And that local police departments have working radios. Like, Representative Carter championed this fascinating initiative, H.R. 8874. That's the Homeland Security Capabilities Preservation Reporting Act of 2026.
That's a mouthful.
It is, yeah. But this bill basically forces the Department of Homeland Security to track what happens to a city's anti-terrorism defenses the exact moment their federal grant money dries up.
Right. And to understand the mechanism here, the why of it all, you have to look back at the post-9/11 landscape. So the federal government established the Urban Area Security Initiative, or UASI. And they did this to pump grant money into high-density cities to build up their counterterrorism infrastructure.
Right, so we are talking about, like, specialized bomb squad robots, interagency communication networks, joint training exercises, things like that.
Exactly. All of the big-ticket security items.
Yeah.
But the DHS uses a specific formula to calculate risk. And that formula changes over time.
Right.
So when a city drops below a certain risk threshold on that spreadsheet, they lose that UASI funding stream.
But a city doesn't just magically lose all its vulnerabilities because a spreadsheet in Washington updated. The port is still there, right?
Right.
The stadiums are still there?
And that is the exact underlying logic of this bill. When the grant money vanishes, the sophisticated equipment they bought years ago, it begins to degrade.
Because they can't maintain it.
Exactly. The specialized hazmat training lapses because the city can't afford the overtime pay for the officers. The expert personnel migrate to other agencies.
Oh, wow.
So Congress is recognizing that this creates a hidden vulnerability. They are suddenly very concerned with measuring what happens when that money dries up. So they are requiring a report every 3 years to measure that degradation.
Just ensuring our baseline post-9/11 preparedness isn't quietly rusting away in some local municipal garage.
Exactly.
It's all about maintaining the foundation. And speaking of fixing foundational cracks, there is H.R. 7574. This is the ELO Realignment and Strategic Engagement Reform Act of 2026.
Right.
In plain English, it consolidates two overlapping intelligence offices within DHS into a single point of contact for state and local law enforcement.
Because the Department of Homeland Security is, honestly, it's a labyrinth.
Yeah.
Over the decades, it has developed these parallel bureaucratic structures that essentially duplicate efforts.
Which seems wildly inefficient.
It is. In this instance, having two separate offices handling intelligence sharing, it creates a dangerous amount of friction.
It's like merging two overlapping group chats so everyone finally gets the exact same message at the same time.
Yes.
Because when a local sheriff or like a city police chief needs actionable threat data, they don't have time to figure out which federal office has the most up-to-date bulletin. Consolidating them means local law enforcement finally gets a single unified radar screen.
That is the perfect analogy, honestly. Information silos in law enforcement, they cost lives. Streamlining the flow of intelligence down to the local level removes that deadly friction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, that level of pragmatic problem solving, it carried over into the passage of H.R. 3-106, too.
Oh, right.
The Weatherizing Infrastructure in the North and Terrorism Emergency Readiness Act.
Yes, this is the bill I mentioned at the very beginning of the deep dive. It passed the House 400-7.
Which is wild.
That kind of near-unanimous agreement is incredibly rare. The bill requires DHS to conduct a terrorism exercise that specifically models cascading critical infrastructure failures during extreme cold weather.
Right, and it demonstrates a very sophisticated understanding of modern asymmetric warfare. Adversaries do not plan attacks in a vacuum.
No, they don't.
They look for force multipliers. If a bad actor physically or digitally attacks a regional power grid in the middle of a catastrophic winter freeze, the initial blackout isn't the primary weapon.
The weather is.
The weather is the weapon, yes.
Right, because the cascading effects do the real damage. Hospitals lose their backup generators, municipal water pipes freeze and burst, so fire departments completely lose water pressure.
Exactly.
And, like, transportation arteries freeze over, preventing emergency response vehicles from even moving.
It multiplies the lethality of the attack exponentially.
Wow.
So by passing this bill so decisively, lawmakers are openly acknowledging that federal, state, and local agencies, they have to practice their coordinated response to these complex, multi-layered nightmare scenarios before they actually happen.
It's terrifying, but I'm glad they're doing it. We also saw that same bipartisan efficiency applied to international travel logistics, which is a bit lighter.
Yes, much lighter.
H.R. 9388 extends the one-stop pilot program from 6 years to 10 years. So instead of just adding more TSA agents, this changes how luggage and security data are shared internationally.
Right.
If a foreign passenger is thoroughly screened at an approved overseas airport, they don't have to recheck their bags or go through a secondary physical screening when they transfer through the U.S.
It's basically a data harmonization strategy. Yeah. If you trust the security apparatus of an allied nation, you just accept their screening data.
Makes sense.
It saves massive amounts of federal resources and speeds up the process for everyone. And the House paired that with H.R. 8897, the Improving Travel for American Families Act.
Right, which passed 398-12.
Yep. These are the operational maintenance bills that, you know, they never make the Sunday morning political shows.
Never.
But they directly dictate the friction you experience in your daily life.
Yeah, and when citizens see Congress effortlessly moving these practical, targeted bills in the House, it makes the gridlock on the other side of the Capitol feel even more jarring.
It really does.
Because when we shift our focus over to the Senate, the scale of the spending and the intensity of the fight is vastly different.
Completely different.
The Senate is wrestling with S. 4784. That's the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA.
Right, and the NDAA is one of the very few legislative vehicles considered must pass every single year.
Right, it has to happen.
It dictates the budget, the procurement policies, the strategic posture for the entire United States military. Because it's a moving train guaranteed to leave the station, it attracts fierce debate.
And a lot of lobbying.
Intense lobbying, and hundreds of amendments.
Yeah. And Senator Chris Van Hollen is mounting a very vocal, aggressive opposition to the fiscal year 2027 NDAA. He is arguing that this bill doesn't just fund the military, it actively lays the groundwork for a bloated Pentagon budget.
Right.
And it sets the stage for potential conflicts abroad. And the numbers he cited are just staggering.
They really are.
He pointed to a nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimate regarding something called the Golden Dome Project, projecting it could cost $1.2 trillion over the next 20 years.
Trillion with a T.
Trillion.
The Golden Dome Project represents this massive, sprawling Defense Infrastructure Initiative.
What is it exactly?
Well, we're talking about a multi-layered, next-generation architecture that spans domestic installations and international defense shields.
Wow.
It's highly classified in its specific details, obviously.
Yeah.
But conceptually, it is designed to be an impenetrable technological canopy.
Okay, I see.
But executing a vision that vast requires an astronomical financial commitment. $1 trillion is larger than the entire gross domestic product of many developed nations.
Yeah, and Van Hollen drew a very sharp contrast there. He placed that $1.2 trillion price tag directly next to the everyday economic reality of his constituents.
Right.
He talked about Americans dealing with sticky inflation, punishing grocery bills, and completely out-of-reach housing costs.
Yeah, it's a stark comparison.
But I have to push back on the legislative process itself here.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if the Pentagon consistently fails its audits, as was widely reported back in December, why does Congress maintain this momentum of funneling trillions of dollars into it year after year?
That is the big question.
I mean, they can't account for billions of dollars in assets. Is it just political autopilot?
Well, it's a highly complex dynamic, and it's rooted in both history and structural economics.
Okay.
Historically, the U.S. has built its foreign policy around being the primary guarantor of global security,
Right.
which demands a permanently mobilized, cutting-edge defense industrial base. But structurally, you have to look at how that money is actually spent domestically.
What do you mean?
Defense spending is heavily decentralized. The manufacturing of a single new fighter jet, or, a component for the Golden Dome, that might be spread across supply chains in 40 different states.
Oh, so cutting the defense budget isn't just an abstract geopolitical debate.
No.
It means literally cutting high-paying manufacturing jobs in a lawmaker's home district.
Exactly. It becomes politically perilous for any representative, regardless of their party affiliation. The spending is just deeply entrenched in the domestic economy.
That makes a lot of sense.
And because the NDAA has that unstoppable momentum, lawmakers attach a barrage of specialized amendments to it.
Right, and the Blade Act is a perfect example of that. It stands for Blocking Large-Scale Adversarial Distillation Efforts.
Yes.
It's an amendment designed to protect American artificial intelligence models, specifically the private, closed-source models developed by tech companies from being extracted by foreign adversaries.
And the mechanism they're trying to stop here is called distillation.
Distillation, right.
An adversary doesn't necessarily need to, hack a server to steal an AI.
Really?
Yeah, if they have access to a massive, highly advanced American AI model, they can just feed it millions of prompts, and then they use its highly sophisticated outputs to rapidly train their own smaller, cheaper model.
Yeah.
They are essentially siphoning off the technological capability without paying the billions of dollars required for the initial research and development.
They are pirating the intelligence of the model itself.
Precisely.
That's fascinating. And alongside cutting-edge AI protections, they are also tacking on rules regarding the TRICARE pharmacy program, which manages the health insurance and prescription drug benefits for military veterans and active duty families.
Yep.
So the NDAA really just becomes this massive legislative catch-all.
It does. It really does. And when you are debating trillion-dollar defense contracts, aerospace manufacturing, and advanced AI protections, it inevitably raises profound questions about financial influence.
Yeah, definitely. Because when citizens see Congress effortlessly greenlighting trillion-dollar projects while, nickel and diming local infrastructure, it breeds a very specific kind of cynicism. And that brings us perfectly to the House's concurrent attempt to triage that exact loss of public trust. They were debating campaign finance reform, specifically H.R. 3535, the Stop Foreign Funds in Elections Act, authored by Representative Fitzpatrick.
Right. And during this debate, Representative Brian Steele delivered some very pointed remarks. He noted that as the United States approaches its 250th anniversary, there is a palpable, dangerous erosion of the public's faith in their own government.
Which we all feel, honestly.
Yeah. He specifically cited a recent Supreme Court decision regarding the coordination between super PACs and individual candidates, expressing deep concern that the political landscape is being entirely overwhelmed by dark money and billionaire contributions.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. H.R. 3535 doesn't just restate the obvious rule that foreign nationals cannot donate to a presidential or Senate campaign.
Right.
It specifically targets foreign money sneaking into local ballot initiatives and referenda.
Yes.
But wait, hold on. I get why a foreign adversary would want to influence a federal election to change defense policy, sure. But why on earth would a foreign shell corporation care about my town's local zoning laws or a municipal bond measure?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense. Local ballot initiatives often decide highly specific, economically massive issues.
Like what?
Well, they decide zoning for rare earth mineral mining, regulations for local data centers, the expansion of municipal port authorities, and, environmental restrictions on manufacturing.
Oh, I see. So a foreign entity could use a domestic shell corporation to funnel dark money into a local advertising campaign to kill an environmental regulation that benefits their overseas supply chain.
That is exactly the vulnerability. And when that happens, it strips away the agency of the local voter.
Yeah, it does.
The perception of outside influence, whether it is from a foreign entity manipulating a local zoning law, or unaccountable domestic billionaires legally coordinating with super PACs, it degrades the fundamental belief that the government belongs to the American people.
It makes people feel like the game is completely rigged before they even step into the voting booth.
Exactly.
We hear so much about this cynicism. It completely dominates our news cycle. But, reading through the congressional record for this specific day, there is an entirely different layer to how Washington operates.
There really is.
Because despite the dark money and despite the performative partisan outrage, the actual mechanics of Congress still run on deep, messy human relationships.
Yeah, and that human element is largely invisible to the public, mostly because it doesn't generate viral outrage.
Right, it doesn't get clicks.
Exactly. But it was on full display during the emotional floor tributes to the late Senator Lindsey Graham and the honors given to other dedicated public servants.
The stories shared by his colleagues were incredible. Senator Dick Durbin, who is a prominent Democrat, shared a memory about the Gang of Eight immigration reform effort.
Yeah, I read that.
He described sitting right next to Senator Graham, a staunch Republican in the Oval Office, and Durbin recalled watching Graham fiercely and passionately push back against President Trump's remarks on immigrants, arguing right to the president's face that America is defined by its shared ideals, not by race or origin.
And we heard from Senator Chris Coons, too, another Democrat, who shared an anecdote from the extraordinarily tense Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court confirmation hearings.
Oh, yeah.
Coons painted a picture of standing in a chaotic committee room, looking directly at Graham, and publicly admitting that he could simultaneously love Lindsey Graham as a human being and want to throttle him as a politician in the exact same minute.
Which is such a remarkably honest admission.
It really is.
And Representative Jim Clyburn shared a story about how he and Graham managed to secure funding for national parks in South Carolina. They didn't hold dueling press conferences. They didn't put out angry statements. Clyburn said they simply bypassed the entire media circus, got into a golf cart together, and just hashed out a compromise in private.
What these stories illustrate is a vital process insight into how Congress actually functions. Cross-party alliances and genuine interpersonal affections are the essential lubricants of long-term governance.
Yeah.
The public consumes the partisan posturing because that is what raises campaign funds.
Right.
But the actual engine of legislation, the compromises that keep the power grid protected, the military funded, and the airports running, relies heavily on these behind-the-scenes friendships.
It reminds us that underneath the suits and the talking points, these are just people trying to navigate a massive system.
Exactly.
We saw that same recognition in the House when they passed H.R. 6332, naming a post office in Fairfax, Virginia, after the late Congressman Gerald E. Connolly. They weren't just honoring his 16 years of service. They were honoring his tangible legacy with local transit, specifically his relentless work to secure the Silver Line Metro extension.
And infrastructure is often the truest legacy of a lawmaker. It is the constituent problems they solved and the complex relationships they navigated to actually pour the concrete and lay the tracks.
Yeah.
It requires a deeply personal touch that goes far beyond partisan labels.
So we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We've examined how Congress can move with incredible efficiency to protect our cities from cascading infrastructure failures.
Yep.
How they wrestle with the immense gravity of $1 trillion military defense shield. How they are trying to patch the vulnerabilities in our campaign finance laws to protect local voters.
That's a lot.
It is. And how ultimately the whole sprawling apparatus relies on human beings willing to work together.
So if you are listening and you want to track the progress of any of the legislation we unpack today, whether that's H.R. 3106 regarding winter terrorism preparedness or S. 4784, the massive NDAA, you can just visit congress.gov.
It's an incredible free public resource where you can read the actual text of these bills and track their committee status.
And if you have strong feelings about the Golden Dome project, the influence of dark money in local ballot initiatives, or the need for UASI grant transparency, we highly encourage you to contact your local representatives and voice your opinions.
Absolutely.
Engaging with the process is how the system is designed to work.
Well said. We want to express our deep gratitude to you for joining us on this deep dive into civic education. Again, if you want to help keep this resource sustainable and completely ad-free, please consider using the Buy Me a Coffee link in the episode description. It truly helps us keep the lights on.
And looking ahead, there are several crucial congressional actions mentioned in the record that you should watch for.
Yeah.
The Senate will be holding a high-stakes cloture vote on the NDAA, which will determine if they can break the debate logjam and force a final vote.
That'll be huge.
We will also see the official swearing-in of Senator-designate Darlene Graham. Additionally, there are some very interesting upcoming committee hearings scheduled on AI on Main Street and the operational budget of the Supreme Court.
Before we go, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time today unpacking the hidden power of relationships. If unexpected personal friendships, like the one between Lindsey Graham and Chris Coons, or Graham and Jim Clyburn hashing out park funding in a golf cart, are what historically bridged the bitter partisan divides to keep the government functioning, what happens to the future of our democracy as those quiet, interpersonal bonds become increasingly rare in a hyper-funded, highly polarized campaign environment?
It really makes you wonder, if the quiet moments of genuine connection disappear from the halls of Congress, are we just left with the trillion-dollar arguments and the dark money? Something to think about. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. We will see you next time.